All right. Well, back in the old days when we had church every single week, we were in the series called Rest for the Restless. And we were reflecting on the exhausting world we live in and the exhaustedness that we feel and experience. And we're thinking about Jesus, who came to the spiritual leaders and his followers with a very simple invitation. He said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest," which I think is a tremendous invitation for all of us, for each of us. I think that's an invitation to the world. If I can restate this for the world to hear, "Come ye Western societies to me, to Jesus, and he will give you rest." He said, what I want you to do is I want you to take my yoke upon you and learn from me. A few weeks ago, I showed this. This is a real yoke, like a yoke. And Jesus said, "Take my yoke upon you." And like, what is a yoke? It has nothing to do with eggs. A yoke is what bound together a couple beasts to work in the harvest fields. And so two beasts would be, one would be hooked here, one would be hooked here, and the central piece would connect back to the plow or whatever was being pulled, and the beast would pull these things together. And what Jesus said is that, you could take my yoke and learn from me. Rest is given, it's to be received. But even in the ancient Near Eastern world, it needs to be learned. We don't necessarily know how to rest well. And what that means for the Christian is that Jesus has promised you rest, but you might not be able to access it because you might not know how to. He says, "Learn from me, and I will give you rest." 2 weeks ago when we were talking about this, we talked about all sorts of scandal that was going on around the Sabbath day. I don't know if you've ever ruined a good day off. Well, the spiritual leaders in Israel ruined everybody's day off every single week by burdening it with this heavy yoke of all these rules and boundaries and obsessive ways they could get canceled if they didn't say or do the right thing. And Jesus steps into it and says, "Look, you need to understand I am the Lord of the Sabbath," meaning that I am the Lord of rest. And what my hope for this series, and if you're interested in the topic we have a 21-day sort of email campaign. You can sign up for it. You can start at any time, called the 21-Day Restoration Reset. It's on our website. But our goal isn't to learn how to take a day off once a week. Our goal is to learn a Sabbath lifestyle, what it meant that God gave his people, real rest. Now, Sabbath was understood in the context of a story, and it had its own story, and rest has its story. It has a story in your life, has a story in my life. But the ancient Near Eastern world, they had their stories, and cultures are built around their stories, right? If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you know our stories, right? You know about the 3 miracles of the Meadowlands, right? Right? You know the miracles of the Meadowlands? Sorry, Dan Tierney, but I need to recount these. All right, first time was in the late 70s. Joe Pisarcik of the Giants fumbles the ball. Herman Edwards picks it up and runs into the end zone. Miracle of the Meadowlands, number 1. In 2004, I believe it was, Brian Westbrook takes a punt return back for a touchdown with less than 2 minutes to go so that the Eagles can win that game. 2010, the Eagles come back from 27 points down, and they win the game on a walk-off punt return by Deshaun Jackson. The punter never recovered. Okay, so we know the stories. They were Eagles fans, right? Americans, we have our stories. We know about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Gettysburg Address, Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. We know the stories of the fire department of New York going up the World Trade Center to rescue people on 9/11. These are our stories. In the ancient Near Eastern world, they understood the story of Sabbath. And I want to go back into the story, and in order to understand the story, you need to understand the culture that the Exodus came out of. If you have Bibles, you can open up to Exodus chapter 5. But I'm going to kind of cycle us through a bit of the culture that the Israelites were in. If I can take us back there, you remember God led Jacob's family through Joseph down to Egypt. They were there for hundreds of years. And towards the end of it, it just became a more and more impressive situation where the Israelites had been enslaved by the pharaohs, and basically, and they were demanded that they would work, continue to build bricks to build Pharaoh's society. I want to walk you through some of the highlights of Exodus chapter 5. When Moses comes to Pharaoh and says, God, the God of Israel has said that the people of Israel need to take a break, go out into the desert to worship me. This is Pharaoh's response. Exodus 5, verse 4. Why are you taking the people away from their work? Get to their labors. Verse 5. Yet you want them to stop working. Verses 7 and 8. You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you shall require them the same quantity of bricks that they have made previously. Do not diminish it, for they are lazy. More bricks, less straw. Verse 9, let heavier work be laid on them. Then they will labor at it and pay no attention to deceptive words, like Moses coming in and offering them freedom. Verse 10 and 11, I will not give you straw. Go and get straw yourselves wherever you can find it, but your word, Pharaoh, will not be lessened in the least. Verse 13, complete your work, the same daily assignment as when you were given straw. Verse 14, why did you not finish the required quantity of bricks today as you did before? Verse 16, no straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, make bricks. These are the Israelites saying, wait a second, how are we supposed to do this? And the response of Pharaoh and his leadership, you are lazy. That is why you say, let us go and sacrifice the Lord. Go now and work, for no straw will be given you, but you shall still deliver the same number of bricks. Verse 19, you shall not lessen your daily number of bricks. If you know the story of the Exodus, you know that it wasn't Israel versus Egypt. It wasn't even Yahweh so much against Egypt's gods. It was Yahweh versus Pharaoh. Pharaoh claimed himself to be a god, and he demanded tribute. He demanded bricks, and Yahweh was going to humiliate Pharaoh and all the other would-be gods of Egypt. The culture of Egypt for Israel was all about the bricks, was all about the quota, was all about the commodity. Everything about their life was about bricks, more bricks, produce the bricks, find the straw to make the bricks. Their entire identity to Pharaoh didn't see humans, he saw brick makers. He saw means to his ends. It was a culture of industry above all other things. And when God brings them out of Egypt, he's going to give them 10 commands. Now, if you know the 10 commandments, they kind of make sense. If you're going to have a religion, you might as well have one God, and you might as well make sure that everybody doesn't make idols in the form of that God because you'll mess it up, right? You ought to not misuse the name of the gods. Like, if you want to build a society, do not murder is good, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not lie. These are really, really good things. And yet, and in the middle of the whole thing, God says, oh, by the way, you guys get a day off. Now, if you're building a society in those days, this is economics. This is just foolish economics, right? Why would you give the people a day off? It's all about gross domestic product. Why would you allow people to rest? When right before the Israelites go into the promised land, Moses is going to recount to them the 10 commandments. And listen to how he describes it. He says, by the way, he's like, hey, you should keep the Sabbath, and this is for you, your household, all of your animals, all the foreigners who dwell among you. If you have slaves, they get a day. Everybody gets a day off. Everybody in Israel, the entire society gets to enjoy the benefits of the covenant. Okay, and so and he says, and if you want to know why I'm calling you to do this, is that I want you to remember in verse 15 of Deuteronomy 5, it says, "Remember, you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day." Why? Because you are no longer slaves. In Egypt, it was about industry and it was about commodity. It was about bricks. In Israel, the people of God, it's going to be about a covenant. It's about a promise. And whether you made any bricks this week or not, you get to enjoy the Sabbath. If you made way more bricks than your neighbor, you still only get one day. If you didn't make any bricks, you still get to enjoy a day. If you messed up and broke all the bricks, you still get to enjoy the day. Why? Because your value, your identity isn't based upon your brick making. Your value has nothing to do with a commodity. Your value is based upon a covenant. Your value is based upon who God made you to be and your promise. The culture of Egypt made the value of the person about the commodity, about the bricks. Sabbath culture is about covenant and calling. Egyptian culture, and what I would just say, the culture of society is about bricks and commodities. I think you can see the connections to our world today. Have you ever had a situation where, a social situation and you're trying to meet somebody? What's the first thing that gets said? What do you do? How do you produce bricks? I was reading an article about a man, and he was talking about his wife's decision to leave the workforce and begin staying at home to care for their children. And she said her entire social scene changed. Like, people didn't know how to have conversations with her. They liked conversing with him because he had an important job and and there was interesting things to grab. But even when they talked to her, they didn't ask about her. They asked about her children, right? They asked about her work. Tell me about your bricks. Tell me about what you're producing to make a better society for all of us. Tell me about your brick making. They didn't know how to access the person without a commodity to talk about. We live in a deeply industrial world. And so much of the world that we live in is about how many bricks you make. And we're told constantly, and in so many ways, we are about the commodity. We are about our commodities. We are about the brick making. What kind of bricks do you make? How many do you make? How many bricks are you saving? You making your own pyramid? What does your pyramid look like, right? As if the work is what makes a person interesting. I don't want to say anything negative about capitalism. There's no perfect economic system. But you need to understand, our entire world is about nurturing brick makers from as early an age as possible. Why? Because they have to get good grades. Why? They have to get good grades so they can get into a good brick making school. And if they can get into a good brick making school, they'll be able to make a lot of bricks and be interesting to others and maybe attract another really good brick maker, or at least somebody from a good brick making family, right? Right? And then I will know, then I can have peace in my heart that my child will produce enough bricks to be seen as valuable in this world. I've seen it with men. When they go through a job transition, it's an existential crisis. And I would find myself in that situation as well. What am I if I do not produce bricks? Who am I if I do not produce bricks? Women feel this when they move in and out of the workforce. They wonder how their value shifts based upon the different shifts they make. We live in a culture of bricks and pyramids. And like, I'll be the first to confess, I'm the worst when it comes to this. Pharaoh would love me. I've got like 2 shelves in my office, all about being a really good brick maker. Efficiency when it comes to bricks, efficiency in getting other people to make bricks faster, better, and of my liking, right? And I love it. I listen to podcasts. I used to voluntarily spend money to read Harvard Business Review on my own time because of how passionate I was about efficiency and building bricks. Kathleen knows that if I don't get something done early on a Saturday, I'm just sort of a emotional mess. She just kind of leaves me alone early on a Saturday, and I know if I could just go do something. In fact, you know what? You just need to know I save work for Saturday morning so that at least I can get something done and feel somewhat good about myself. On vacation, I go through like a little mini depression because I don't know who I am if I'm not producing something, right? And there's nothing wrong with industry. Industry is good, and the Bible will talk about make it have a simple ambition. Paul says to the Thessalonians, he says, "Hey, make it your ambition to live a quiet life, working with your hands, so you'll not depend on anybody." That is a good thing until we start leveraging things, right? Because if who we are is related to our brick making and the commodities we produce or consume, what happens is we have to start, if things don't go right, we have to start leveraging things like our relationships or our finances or our health or our mental health. And we live in a world that's leveraging all of those things to find our identity in being good, faithful brick makers. And we're stressed out and we're worn out. Tim Keller, one of my favorite Tim Keller stories, he was a pastor who planted a church in New York City. And he told his wife, he said, "Look, we're planting this church, and for 2 years, I'm just going to have to run hard." And what he was saying to her is like, we're just going to have to leverage a few things while I focus on this specific thing. Well, I don't know how much time had gone by, but he came back to his apartment on Roosevelt Island one day to see his wife out on the little porch. You know, they had like this very small little porch. And she had a hammer in her hands, and she was breaking dishes. And as he got closer, he saw that she was breaking the dishes that they had gotten for their wedding. And he's like kind of alarmed at this point. And he comes out and says, what are you doing? And she said, "You said you'd stop. You said you'd stop. And I've been telling you need to stop. I've been telling you need to slow down. But at this point in time, it's starting to feel like a breaking of the covenant as you continue to leverage what we have here to give them what they want there. And so I am doing this to get your attention." It got his attention. And he asked her, like, why do you have to break the dishes from our wedding? She says, "Oh, these are just the saucers that didn't have a cup anymore." But it can get to the best of us. And every single one of us are prone to leverage the best of us for Pharaoh, for the pharaohs of this world who are going to continue to ask for more bricks. In our world, we're either making bricks or buying bricks. And oftentimes, most of us, that's what we're reduced to, the making of or buying bricks. I'm trying to back up and just kind of lay a foundation here so we can kind of understand the world we're in. And I think a simple way for us to understand how it affects our lives and a way to understand how we can see ourselves differently is simply ask ourselves, when it comes to the things I'm doing and the way I'm spending my time and my energy, am I driven or am I called? Slaves are driven. They have no choice but to react to the anger and the interests and the compelling fists of the pharaohs around them. But the people of God were called. They're called out of Israel. They're called into the wilderness. They're called and invited in to a rhythm of rest and work in their lives. Are you driven by the problems in your life, or are you called to them? In the Christian world, the way you can understand your life is that you are called. You're a child of God, and as a child of God, you're probably given some responsibilities. Maybe you have a job and you have to provide for your family. That's a calling. Maybe you have loved ones that you need to physically care for, like parents or spouses or children. That's a calling from God. Maybe you have a responsibility that you're caring for us in our church. That is a calling from God. And when it comes to rest and your body, you've been given a body to steward, and it is a calling from God to steward it well. And part of that calling is to learn, right? We don't pick this up naturally. To learn the rhythms of work and rest. Why? Because we're the people of God. We're not going to be like the rest of the world. The people of God, the Israelites, by taking a Sabbath, would be radically different than everybody else in the world. The world has to stress about all the things it needs to do. We are the people of God. We're provided for. We can take time. We can rest. We can enjoy. I said this a few weeks ago, but Jesus said, do not worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, or about what you wear. The pagans run after those things. You don't have to be a runner. You don't have to run. You don't have to be constantly reacting to this person, this problem, this situation. You don't have to be a reactive person. Your life isn't a reaction. Slaves must react. You are called, and you get to respond. It's an entirely different way of being. And that means, and this is my what I advocate for, I would suggest that you can find 24 hours in your life that's not about the commodity. Maybe you'll buy something and maybe you'll go out to dinner, but it's not going to be about consuming. It's not going to be about producing. You get to enjoy the value that God has given you. It's going to be about the promise. It's about the covenant and enjoying the life that God has given you. Even if you've had the worst work week ever, you got fired, you still get to enjoy the Sabbath. If you had the best week ever, you only get one day for the Sabbath. Everybody gets to enjoy the Sabbath regardless of how the world measures you. You get to enjoy having a value in and of yourself that God has called you out. You are a child, you are not a slave. When the people of God understand that, what happens is it shapes us into different kinds of people. Paul will later say, keep in step with the Spirit, and you'll not gratify the desires of the sinful nature, right? The desires of the sinful nature, they're going to keep you running, right? But when you keep in step with the Spirit, you can learn the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Why? Because these things are available to you when you are keeping at the pace of the Spirit. If you walk in step with the Spirit, if you're walking in step with your anxious flesh, trying to appease your oppressors and your pharaohs in your life, well, of course you're going to get the anxiousness that comes with trying to please the unpleasable. We are called, we're not driven. So this week and next week, I want us to walk through 4 aspects of a Sabbath lifestyle. We can get to one today, and then we'll get to the rest of them. And we're going to simply look at one of the central passages of the Old Testament, Psalm 23. I'm going to just go to Psalm 23, and you know how it starts. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He didn't say, the Lord is my shepherd, look what I've done. The Lord is my shepherd, and at some point I'm not going to have to want anymore. The Lord is my shepherd, I will arrive someday, right? The Lord is my shepherd, I can rest. The Lord is my shepherd, I have enough. It's covenant language. Now, we might say, well, David was a king. That's easy for the king to say, right? Of course he doesn't want, right? When's the last time you've seen a satisfied king? When's the last time you've seen a celebrity who's got it all just stop? One of my favorite poets says, old men want to be king, old men want to be rich men want to be king, and the king ain't satisfied till he rules everything. Is there really satisfaction in a little bit more? Do you need just a little bit more, then you can rest? That's the message of the Pharaoh. More bricks. It's the illusion of arrival. Someday I will arrive, and then I can rest. Actually, Dave is kind of honest about this. He says, I lack nothing, but you need to understand them. He says, when it comes to the shepherd, he makes me lie down in green pastures. It doesn't say he lets me lie down. He makes me lie down. And maybe you have found that to be true of your life. If God said, yeah, go ahead and lay down when you feel like it, I probably won't. David remembers what it meant to be a shepherd, and he noticed that if the sheep were anxious in any way, they wouldn't rest. If they were afraid of where they were going to find food, or if they're afraid of predators, or if they were being picked on by others in the herd, they would just kind of stand in this anxious state, neither grazing well nor resting well. I know that's what anxiety does for me. When I'm anxious, I get very little done, and I don't even get rest. I just kind of like spin around, right? The Sabbath is God's command. Lay down. You can stop. When it comes to the things in this world, you can let it go. You can stop today, and you don't have to be in control of your career. You can let go of the culture wars. You can go a day without being informed. You can stop today, and you can let God handle whether other people consider you interesting. You don't have to post something today to be interesting. You can let God handle your worth, your merit. You can let God handle your family members. You can let God handle the brokenness of this world. And you can let God handle the brokenness of your heart. You don't have to fix it. You can rest. You can enjoy. You can enjoy who you are. The first thing I want to just have us think about when it comes to a Sabbath lifestyle is the Sabbath is about ceasing, not switching. It's about ceasing and not switching. And what I mean by switching is if you are like me and you see like an empty spot in the calendar, you're like, oh, let me jam my other ambitions into that spot, right? And instead of ceasing and enjoying being a human being, we allow another ambition to be our driver. I'm going to show people how interesting I am by my hobby, or I'm going to fix this thing here, and I am the king of this, right? Whether it's the adventures I go on, or my home curation, or how I'm able to please more and more people, right? I've learned to ask this question whenever I come to my Sabbath time, and whenever I come to an empty spot on my calendar. What's going to feel restorative to me? Now, you need to know 95 times out of 100, it's almost always a project. If I get this thing done, then I will feel better. No joke. Last week, you might have seen on a Friday, I posted a video that said, hey guys, snow Sabbath, try to rest, try to not make this time matter, just enjoy yourself, right? Right, 3 hours later, I'm talking to Kathleen on the phone. I'm like, hey, Kathleen, we've got 2, maybe 3 days, and we're not going to be able to go anywhere. What if I go to Home Depot and get a whole bunch of that stuff? Because we have this project that's in the middle. We did this thing near our cupboards, and it's like we had to redo the walls, but the floors look like trash, but the floors are connected to the laundry room, right? And now that room's a mess too. But if we're going to fix that, we need to get we got to get the washer and the dryer out of there, move into another room. What if we did that this weekend? What if this was the weekend we took the washer and dryer out of the laundry room? If we can actually get it through there, we might have to remove the trim. What if we did that and then we can get that project done, right? Have you ever played the game Tetris? Right? You know Tetris, right? It's like constantly moving these shapes to fill in the gaps. It's like, I've got a gap. Let me see if I can contort myself and my entire life to just squeeze this extra thing in there. And then I'll get more space, right? And the illusion is that if I keep doing that well, I'll get more and more space, right? But just every time you make a mistake, it gets higher and it gets higher and it's higher. And then you have to go faster. You have to think faster. You have to think quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker, right? I love Tetris. Daggone, I was very good at Tetris. And I took those skills right into my work life and my professional life. And what ends up happening is we end up looking at our lives as to what we can do to make more bricks. I think it's interesting that Tetris is about bricks, right? What can we do to squeeze more in? Instead of enjoying the opportunity to cease, we find ourselves switching. And we never enjoy the rest given to us by God. We find ourselves continually driven. Now, like I said, work may not be your thing. Work may not be the thing that makes you interesting. But we have all sorts of ways that things drive us. What would it look like for you to set aside a day and risk boredom? In all the parenting literature right now, they're saying you got to let your kids get bored. What would it look like for you to have a day set aside and risk boredom? Risk an inefficient day. What could be restorative for you? I want to fast forward to next week and say one of the things we want to talk about next week is that the Sabbath is about feasting, not fasting. So it's not like you have to fast from work. You're actually given an entirely new vision of what life is all about. The Sabbath would always begin with a feast. In ancient Near Eastern culture, the Hebrew day started in the evening. And so the Sabbath began with a meal, bringing people together. I want to show you a photo of Lord Denethor. If you're a Lord of the Rings geek like me, you might know this man's face. He was the steward of Gondor, and he was a miserable man. He was a miserable man, and the most famous scene is the steward of Gondor, the kingdom of Gondor. They didn't have a king, and he's eating this meal. He's eating the best meal in the entire kingdom, and he's so deeply angry and broken and utterly in despair. What the movie doesn't tell you is that, you see it in the books, that he was given this orb, this glass orb known as the Palantir. And what he would do with the Palantir is he would gaze into this Palantir because he was able to see all the things that went on throughout all of Middle Earth. He was able to see everything that was going on in Middle Earth. And he kept looking into this, and he couldn't stop looking into this glass object to see all the things that are going on in the world. And he got more and more depressed and angry and depressed and angry to the point where this glass object commanded all of his attention, and he couldn't see the wonderful life he had right in front of him. He couldn't see the courage of his sons. He couldn't see the devotion of a young hobbit. He couldn't see that he lived a better life than anybody in all of Gondor. All he could do is look at what was broken about the world around him as he looked into this glass object. What he didn't know is that the algorithm for this object was controlled by something much darker. And he thought he was in control of what he was seeing, but he wasn't. he got more and more depressed and broken and detached. You can probably pick up where I might be laying down there. When we worship, and one of the things we're starting to do every single week, is we want to celebrate communion. Communion is the opportunity to come and hold something very real. To know the love of God is real and it's local. We share it with other people around us. It's a local expression of God's love for you every single day, that rest and feasting and dignity is available to you. Whether you had a good day or a bad day, the table is available to you. Whether you've lived a good life or the worst life of all, this table is available to you to come and experience grace right in front of you, tangible for you and for your life. You might not be able to see all the goodness of your life, but Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me, so you might be reminded that no matter how many bricks you made this week, he has a table that he prepares for you in front of your enemies, in front of the chaos, in the middle of your messy life, in the middle of this messy world, in our messy minds and our messy hearts. We still get to feast because we're his children, and he prepares this table for us to enjoy. Stand together, we'll pray, and then I'll send us to the tables. Jesus, our opportunity to celebrate all that we have been given is because you have completed the work of salvation. On the cross, you said, it is finished. There's nothing we could add to what you've done. There's no bricks that we could say, hey, look what we did. Because you have checked every box. Because you have said, it is finished. We drop our tools. We surrender our merit-based living, and we receive grace. We thank you for the bread and the cup and the reminder of our value in your family. In Jesus' name we pray.